Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. It was 4th of July, Independence Day for the United States, the Philippines, and probably a few other countries considering how many there are. So it doesn't seem like we got any new news as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! And I imagine we won't have that much new news in general. Over the Tuesday period, I have finished playing Lord of the Rings, the adventure card game, a game which I just can't recommend at all. It's way too much grind for a game that's not being played. Speaking of games not being played, I saw something on Reddit that said less than like 2% of the player base is playing Halo Infinite at this point, which that's not super surprising. Let's actually go to the shop and see if we can open some packs before we start playing. There's obviously not a lot to do today. We're just waiting for, I guess, the next big event to happen, which I'm perfectly happy with the idea of having some downtime. And just playing ranked for a while to try and see if this month might be the month where they give you enough time to potentially move up the ladder more than once. By which I mean, in my case, I want to move up to diamond if possible. But I'm level 5 gold at the moment, so that would be a lot of gameplay, which, yeah, maybe I won't be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Although the odds don't look particularly likely that would happen. I spent 2 hours earlier this morning trying to make a quote-unquote quick look on Harry Potter Magic Awakened, and I literally did one tutorial card-based fight. For the most part, I spent the 2 hours customizing my character and going through kind of a visual novel style narration. So the whole game comes off a lot more like it is an RPG game that just has a card mechanic as the metaphor for how you fight, and at that it's not even much of a card mechanic in that sense, because you're clicking on cards or dragging cards to specific spots, but the location where you activate those spots affects the area of influence on spells, and there's only like 75 cards in the game to begin with. The game is incredibly buggy, which is not super surprising. There is some major concerns I have with it. Like, at first, when you watch the cutscene of Harry Potter Magic Awakens, you see in the middle of the cutscene on the main menu what struck me as a female girl dancing with another female girl. So I thought, oh, even though this is a NetEase game, Chinese company, they were going to be particularly inclusive and try and not have any major controversy of being like anti-LGBT, since the author of Harry Potter is anti-T, at least. Which, that was fine, and also certainly on the depiction, it seems like there's going to be a much better balance of girls as main characters or as secondary characters. But then there's basically two characters that are first presented to you. One is a male character, and they've decided to call all male characters wizards, but all female characters are being called witches. Now, maybe that is in line with the book, but I feel like in the movies, uh, they actively went out of their way to not say that. Uh, I feel like the aspect of having a separate nomenclature does a disservice for it. And then in the setup, they also say that only girls and boys, the wizards, are in one room versus the witches being in another room. So there's just this gendered segregation happening that feels like it might have more of an effect than it would seem. Like, on the practical aspect, if Hogwarts was a real boarding school, yes, it kind of makes sense that you would separate the boys and girls for fear of a wave of, I guess, teen pregnancy. But in the magical world of Harry Potter, where anybody can jump out of any window and fly on a broomstick to any other window, you're going to have to do a little bit more than that to prevent any mingling of the sexes. And on both aspects, you could certainly see many ways in that people could sneak off, or you could potentially even have the teachers put spells on the kids, some kind of like cootie spell where girls and boys can't romantically engage. Although at a certain point, why do that? Why not just put on spells that are straight up like contraception pill and anti-STI spells? You do get into some weirdness, certainly, there when you start to put practicality on it. And I don't know if in the books or in the TV show they did have different genders in different rooms, but you definitely had different genders in different houses, which the house system itself I think is weird, and something that they could have potentially avoided, particularly in Magic Awakens, since this is set after the events of Harry Potter. You could have renamed the houses to get rid of Slytherin. You could have gotten rid of the house system. Dumbledore is dead at this point. There's a new headmistress, new teachers in general for the entire school, it seems like, from what little I've seen of them in the first 2 hours. You spend really the first 2 hours in Diagon Alley just customizing your appearance, which brings about the next problem with Magic Awakened, is that of the 2 basic characters, there are then maybe 6 other spin-off characters of slight variation that seem like they have a lot less done with them as far as their appearance. So I picked one of the latter 6 characters and picked a dark-skinned of African descent girl, and in the process of changing her appearance after you select the preset, which really it should be the other way around, I think, because they really don't tell you that you can change the preset, so starting with the preset doesn't make the most sense, and it only gets worse when you see that all the presets are so incredibly similar. So I started the preset with a dark skin, and in the process of changing the makeup, of which a lot of the face, hairstyles, and such made the character look too old. Like, it seemed more like you were doing makeup for a 20-year-old than you were doing makeup potentially for a, what would it be, 7th, 8th, 9th grader, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, 9th grader, yeah. You're talking early teenagers basically. And so having like a look that looks more appropriate for somebody who is going on a date in their 20s just didn't feel quite right in a lot of the appearances. And when you get to the makeup, it immediately puts the white pale skin on appearance preset on the character. So even if you chose a dark-skinned character, the game is going to just accidentally or intentionally push you towards a light-skinned character otherwise. And yeah, the workflow should not happen that way. Somebody should have caught that. And that is my concern, certainly, as far as NetEase being the publisher and having to go through NetEase launcher is certainly no fun either. But my concern there is that there's just going to be an unintentional, unthought of racism, or that Asians often sometimes exhibit, or just a this is not default as an option. You could certainly just chalk that up to one of the many things that need to be improved and polished. But yeah, the first whole hour of the game is just a dress-up game. Just dressing up these characters that visually aren't even that different looking. And you're putting on an outfit, and then as soon as you get to Hogwarts, they give you your robes and your school outfit for Hogwarts. So the casual wear outfit you pick, of which there really is only 4 available to the females, 4 outfits that are not even very different visually. But yeah, once you get to school, you're going to want to put on the robes if you're going to cosplay and pretend like this is a Harry Potter story. So you might as well have just started with that, and it might as well have just said, are you going to pick your house, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor. The sorting hat scene is shown. I kind of assume it was just random, and it put me in Hufflepuff, but then you had the option to choose after that point if that's really what you wanted. So you could have made yourself Slytherin or Gryffindor or Ravenclaw. Nothing would have stopped you there. You're introduced in Diagon Alley to several characters, and then it seems to me like at the train to Hogwarts, you're given a prompt potentially where you could ask to sit by 4 characters. I asked to sit by 2 characters, got rejected, and then a 5th character told me to sit down next to her. So they're introducing some main characters that are going to be your rivals or your friends, or friendly rivals. But they don't tell you at all what house those characters are going into, where it kind of is obvious there's 4 characters. It's very likely that one of those 4 characters is going to end up in each of the houses. But again, that feels like story, and the whole game feels like not Final Fantasy type RPG, much closer to what I would expect a Neptunia RPG might be, or even maybe an Atelier RPG would be. And so I really think the game is just being advertised very poorly, and that first 2 hours experience is really, really bad. There should have been a flash forward towards a tutorial fight very quickly, and then a flashback to get equipment and design your character. It's a lot of cosmetic things. It seems like they're going to try and push selling a lot of cosmetic appearance changes of the characters. In a weird way, it kind of just feels like this is Hogwarts Legacy, but if Hogwarts Legacy was set in the future instead of the past and had a kind of manga style animation to it that would allow it to be a mobile game. And yeah, certainly if I was playing it on a mobile form, I could be a lot less critical on the visuals, but the PC version isn't really any better looking in that art style. And I would say the art style feels pretty split too, in that you have a slightly different art style when there's a character that is bespoke and handcrafted versus characters that are just randomly generated through the customization wheel. And anybody that's described in the books is drastically different looking. You know what, I could activate this now. Let's see if this works. Toss this. Destroy this. Do this. So yeah, 2 hours in, and I've just gotten nowhere. Yesterday I also made a YouTube short just saying sorry for the audio things and audio problems, and I did fix the audio problems as best as I can tell for the last episode of Lord of the Rings, so I can start playing a different game now with some small level of confidence that I won't have an audio bug, hopefully. I've also made the first steps to having an automated process using Advanced Scene Switcher again with its new features in the newer versions. So now when a recording stops, it's going to hopefully launch a video, the video that was just recorded, and I can jump around it and listen and make sure that it is still good. So we're going from having a terrible procedure where maybe I would record the first episode of something, or maybe I'd record like 5 minutes of something and then listen to it for the very first episode and just assume no problems for every other episode, down to having at least an automated opportunity to check the audio every time. Audio really shouldn't screw up that often, but it is so devastating if you do have that audio messed up, or if video's messed up, or anything's messed up. If I don't catch it quickly, it could have gone on for years, frankly. And I just don't have enough people watching my footage, and even if people were watching my footage, the delay is so long. Like, pre-moon crash is when the audio bug is going to start showing its head, and that's months and months from now. I also managed to watch a couple episodes of Black Mirror, and I'm trying to catch up on Futurama, which, yeah, Futurama was uncancelled so a few years ago, and I didn't even watch those episodes, so I have a couple seasons potentially to catch up on before Hulu's new season happens. Which I'm not 100% sure. I feel like all of Futurama, the later seasons still have the same gimmick. It's probably somewhat similar to trying to watch like South Park episodes now. Things change, time goes on. You can't do the same jokes over and over again. And the season I'm watching right now is actually like parts. It's broken up in parts, so they're like little movies, and I imagine they may have aired originally as movies. 22-minute chunks, 4 of them. So there's already something different happening there. Okay, let's see. Summon that. Try everything we can do here. If I can clear the field with Zeus. Then I'll be in a decent position. I don't know why I'm at 32. Oh, that didn't work. I'm not 100% sure what the next game is I'm gonna play. I may just play Harry Potter. I'm obviously gonna have to do one more episode of that. I kind of wish I owned Hogwarts Legacy at this point, because that would be a nice comparison and contrast, but my budget's shot, certainly. And the Prime Day sales are just about to happen. That being said, I'm not really expecting to purchase anything for the Prime Day sales, although I feel like I've said that many years and ended up not buying, still buying quite a bit. There is one thing so far that looks like a good deal for pretty much anybody that has Amazon Prime, in that they're offering 24 months of Grubhub Plus for free, which would be free delivery on food from Grubhub for purchases over $12. I don't know for certain, but I vaguely recall there might have been some complaints or issues with Grubhub. Maybe Grubhub has a bunch of fees or something in it. I don't remember what it really was the complaint about, though. But overall, now's not really the best time to buy anything. I feel like a lot of the shortages, either by January of next year or even by Black Friday and Christmas, will be dealt with, and we're potentially going to see new products for a lot of things. Of course, a lot of things are very seasonal, so like if you need a TV, that's still going to be just a regular old decent sale. But if you're looking for a Steam Deck right now, the discounted Steam Decks open up a possibility of there being an upgraded version sometime next year around the Steam Deck anniversary, or even possibly around the next year's summer sale. I canceled my own effect there. Unaffected by cards effects. This is But yeah, overall, I don't know if anything is really on sale. And now it's just kind of never... I think people's finances are just never really good around July, per se. People save up all year to spend way too much in Christmas, and then they're broke the rest of the year, or spend way too much in Black Friday. And so it's a big ask to say buy more now and then buy less later, and it never really works out that way. Probably gonna lose here. This would be funny if this killed that, but it didn't. Send that to the graveyard, I guess. Guess I am in a weird position today where I kind of don't want to play too much Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'm gonna want to check after just this game to see if we've already got the daily quest done. I'm increasingly getting overwhelmed with Marvel Snap, and I'm still playing the Star Trek Lower Decks game. Let's just end here. But yeah, and I'm still playing Destiny Child. Marvel Snap really, I think, is just getting so overwhelming though that even maintaining the daily challenges is going to become too much, with that conquest mode really changing things up. Yeah, we're already done with the daily missions, so yeah, I think I just want to kind of leave it here. One of the things I want to do, and I didn't do it, but I guess I could try and do it now. Let's make a change live and see how that works. If anybody's on the chat, let me know how this sounds. I wanted to do an experiment of reducing the amount of amplification I have on my microphone. Like by default I had it up 5 decibels, but I think I'm gonna go 2.5 decibels and try and get the audio maybe a little bit more balanced and see how that goes. So that I just did that. That may be an imperceivable difference for most though. Yeah, there's just really nothing to do here. Let's do something while we're here. Number owned 0, and then spells and traps. Okay. Probably spells would make sense. Let's also filter this down to just normals and rares. We don't want to craft any super rares. 1, 2, 3. Just show what it looks like to do it the best way potentially to craft cards that you're missing. You just have to drag all of this over here so that you have one, and really you only want one. Like it really is not feasible to say I want 3 copies of every single card, particularly when you know 6,000 to 7,000 of those cards are just not going to be playable at all. In particular, also you have a situation here where even if you missed a card, it doesn't matter as long as you just don't have doubles, because you don't want to create 2. And extra cards are so specialized, you wouldn't want to craft those. Eventually this will stop me, I think, at 60 cards. But it's still an incredibly slow process, as you can tell, to do this. I guess it doesn't stop me at 60. There you go, it stops you at 65. So you can add 65 cards to your deck. You can notice here that there's 2 dots. So let's take one of those out. Then scroll back up. And then throw in another card. And then batch. Generate cards not owned. And so that took me 750 of those points and really leaves me kind of low on rare cards. Did we get any card that wasn't a basic card out of those 65 crafts? We got 1 glossy finish. 2 glossy finishes. So you got this one. You got this one. And you got, I think, this one. Here, yeah. And then everything else is just that. And so, yeah, that is the process of how you would go about crafting cards. So I got 65 unique new cards crafted, all spells. I could easily do that again and wear down my normal cards. Some. Let's see. And there's just so many cards, though. It's not likely going to really change how far down the scroll bar we are. Like, yeah. We have 3/4 of all the cards of the 10,000 plus Yu-Gi-Oh cards owned. There's a lot of normal cards here that would be probably skipped, so you could kind of start here. But yeah, a lot of effect monsters still to be crafted. It probably would have been smart to craft effect monsters, but maybe spells are a little bit more useful. It's kind of hard to tell because everything is just effectively useless. Except for the very specific cards. All these purple, white, and black cards are extra cards. All the green and purple cards are spells and traps. So getting all the spells and traps eliminated, so there was only extra cards needed to be crafted. Might be an interesting move. Of course, you're still going to have a lot of ultra rares and super rares, and no way you're going to have enough crafting points for those. Yeah, there is quite a lot of spells here. But there's no way to really test out the spells or know anything. And then we just discard that deck completely because we don't need it. There is no collection metric here, though. It feels like, particularly, that's something that Yu-Gi-Oh! Could steal from Marvel Snap, is to say, hey, as you've collect new cards, you should get some rewards that would lead towards more legacy packs being purchasable or something like that. Yeah, there's 4,000 cards in these legacy packs, and yeah, you would have a hard time sorting this to any satisfactory way. Alright, so inevitably you have a catch-22 here where I do want to play more and go up ranked. Well, no, I want to go up ranked. That's the part I want to go up to, is at least tier 5 platinum, if not diamond. And at some point they've added a new level here called Master. I don't know when they introduced that. Speaking of introducing things, it seemed like Marvel Snap was going to introduce a new kind of reward, but in their latest update they didn't introduce it, so maybe that's coming later. I don't know. Here we have a tweet. I did see a tweet about a potential competitor to Twitter, as Twitter is increasingly falling apart and being abandoned, for something called Threads. Maybe that will be the new place to be. Maybe, maybe not. I'm willing to jump on board for something new as soon as it starts to seem like most people are going there. Twitter in particular is a weird advertise yourself type service, whereas Facebook is more friends and family, and Reddit is more argue with people on the forum. So they all serve slightly different purposes. Instagram, Tumblr each have their own different purposes. So a Twitter competitor in particular is something I would like to see. Although you really are just trading one problem for the other if you go to a new service. I'm so glad I updated my macro a long time ago to not use Twitter as the source for news, because had I stuck with that, I would be in a terrible, terrible position right now, not getting any of the video game news to work. But yeah, YouTube creators, slow to change, put out this tweet: keep your content emojis organized. How? With playlist. Here's a few ideas with them. Content from a specific place, vlogs and daily items, reviews, start to the end of a process, any of the your reoccurring formats. Peep more on playlists. So YouTube creators should not say the word organized. It should not be in their mouths, because YouTube does absolutely nothing to allow you to be organized in any way whatsoever. You can add videos to playlists, certainly, but they've done very little to make playlists make sense or to automate the process of adding things to playlists. And even if something isn't a playlist, when you get to the YouTube Studio, there's not really a way to search for videos that are only in a specific playlist, or put specific videos easily in a playlist in a specific order. You can add it into a playlist and hope that they are in the right order. Playlists should be visually depicted as folders in your YouTube Studio content. And if that were the case, my 10,000 plus videos on my channel could easily fall into a few hundred folders, which would be much more organizable and believable and usable. And I've tried personally lots of different playlists, and I don't think any of them show up in search results or in any way really help people. When I'm watching YouTube videos, playlists often aren't useful. They are, if anything, a vector at which people try to run scams, and they make playlists of other people's content, or they make multiple playlists that just have the same thing in them to try and show up in search results. But yeah, they need to do a much better job around organization before they even say the word organization. GameDeveloper.com has a report that Apple has cut the Vision Pro production targets and delayed plans for a more affordable headset. Which, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's asking quite a lot for the price. I think the Vision Pro was like an $1,100 device, and if anything, it sets the established belief here of what a real VR headset or augmented reality glasses is going to look like. It is going to be swim goggles that it'd be nice if they had a screen that automatically electronically darkened, like an LCD screen, or there's smart electric wall curtains type technology, and there is another manufacturer of AR glasses that does have that, so it's doable for sure. But yeah, the form factor for these kinds of goggles with this kind of technology is going to be this giant, completely encloses your eyes, blacks out any light from the sides above or below, and projects a screen that way on the screen. But the price has got to get considerably down. It's once again just yet another generation of failed attempts at VR. The bigger problem, certainly, though, with augmented reality or VR is that there's still just no good interface or system for it. Imagine if computers never invented the mouse. If Apple had never invented the mouse as a product. I don't think they actually invented it, but they bought the rights to it or something. But nobody would be using computers these days if for decades people were having to use either a trackball or a arcade control stick or keyboard alone. Keyboard only computers were very much in existence for many years, and they never became popular until that mouse interface existed. And that's what we need, is we need a mouse-like interface for VR, and we don't have it. Here's that competitor Threads coming from Jack Horwood, which Horwood, maybe that's the guy who originally founded Twitter. He's the head of Instagram at the moment. So, yeah. If anything, it feels like Threads are just going to be an Instagram edition. With a dark and light mode. Of course, if you have to deal with the same company that runs Instagram, maybe you don't want to deal with that. Wouldn't that be? I think Instagram actually is Facebook. Not sure. I could be wrong about that. Then we have a story here. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown revives the series' side-scrolling past. And this is either a case from GameDeveloper.com where they have been paid to advertise Prince of Persia by Ubisoft, and this is really just advertisement in the form of an article, or this is a contributor who had nothing else to write about. Nope, it basically is an advertisement. The senior game producer explains, talking about the game. So they gave a exclusive, something of actual monetary value, since they run ads on their site, to GameDeveloper.com, and now GameDeveloper.com is promoting a game that really nobody should be talking about at this point. Like, not because it's guaranteed to be a failure or anything like that. I know a lot of people didn't like it. It definitely felt off-putting when it was announced at the Summer Game Fest a couple weeks ago, but there's no reason to talk about it now because there's no launch date. We're not really going to get any major details here. The idea that Prince of Persia was a side-scrolling platforming game, well, maybe you could technically say that's true. That is definitely not what this game is compared to what the original Prince of Persia was. The original Prince of Persia was a running, platforming, and dodging trap platformer. This is going to be run with really no concern for your life or health until you hit an enemy, then mash a bunch of buttons for a hack and slash element. There's very little sword play in Prince of Persia, and it's fairly late in the original game. And if anything, going back to the side-scrolling roots is a mistake, because Prince of Persia succeeded greatly when it left the side-scrolling format. Nobody would have been talking about Prince of Persia if they just continued to make side-scrolling games. They didn't even try when they were making the 3D games originally. The Japanese television network Tokyo Broadcast System has made a full-scale entry into the game industry. The company hopes to turn its franchises into household names. It's kind of interesting that Tokyo Broadcast System is called Tokyo Broadcast System instead of, well, I guess Tokyo is called Tokyo in Japanese. TBS in the West, of course, is more recognizable as the Turner Broadcast System. Yeah. The question, I guess, to ask here, though, is what does TBS actually air, and what do they actually have the rights to? New game company will be the ultimate weapon at leveraging the power of the content creation. As with other famous game characters, we aim to turn our original IPs into household names through the creation of games that enrich the lives of players anywhere. Let's see. Some of their programs include Sasuke Ninja Warrior, or just Ninja Warrior, I assume is what it's called. Saturday Night Chubao. I have no idea what that is. But those two have already been adapted to games. So to me, this seems like this is going to be, at least at the first step, making games for Japan only. There is a big weirdness, as I understand it, around Japanese TV, in that I don't think too many Japanese people actually watch Japanese TV. I don't think too many people have any kind of cable or paid service for Japanese TV. Japan being a small enough place and most of the people being in Tokyo, I imagine that you can get an antenna on a TV and just watch broadcast TV pretty easily if you're even going to watch that. But who has time to watch TV in Japan? Think about it. The stereotype of every student in Japan is that they're forced to do studying and homework non-stop for their entire youth. They wouldn't have time to watch TV. I've never seen in any anime or TV Japanese formatted content that shows a Japanese person. I've never seen a kid watch TV at all. They always play video games, and it's either PC games or it's console games, but I've never seen them use a TV to actually watch anything, except for, I guess, what was that? Totoro Lives Alone. There was a plot line where he, as a very, very young kid, watched cartoons on TV, a specific cartoon. And My Uncle from Another World, I think, was the other Netflix anime, and they sometimes got news reports. Yeah, there were a couple times where news reports would pop up on TV when the writers needed a way for something big to be announced. But yeah, to get away from fantasy like anime and get back to reality, though, I don't think Japanese young people watch TV. I don't think Japanese old people watch TV if they're still working. Maybe you have some bored housewives and retired people that watch TV. That would be very much in line with the demographic that's still watching TV in the West, too, is it's retired people and bored housewives. So I don't imagine TBS really has a lot of intellectual property that is actually good or that recognizable. It certainly is a big ship. It's definitely important to also point out that any anime is done by a production company, and the production company would own the rights to any anime and the rights to make any game. TBS has numerous sports, radio, news, and TV shows across a huge network of channels. I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. Here's the website. It's interesting that it's in English. It's also interesting, it looks like they've taken images directly from either a stock image site or the ESA. But yeah, this is definitely speaking to foreigners in that you're not seeing a bunch of Japanese gamers. Alright. Let's see if we can recognize any of these logos. No. I cannot. Yeah. Sasuke Ninja Warrior there. So let's see. Click on the drama, and then immediately the front page goes to Japanese. Well, that's not going to help me much. It's not like there's a button here that says switch it to English. Oh, here. Let's try that button. See what that does. Seems like clicking on English took me to a totally different website. Okay. So we're wasting our time basically clicking on any of these others. Let's check anime and movie just to see if there's something recognizable here. I might be able, from the pictures, be able to tell you. Okay, so here's the anime of the quintessential quintuplets. I couldn't tell you what this is, but it looks like an isekai. Bucket List of the Dead. Probably a newer series. These all seem like these are probably new series. This might be the Steins Gate anime. Yeah. Couldn't really tell you what this is. Let's see what happens when we click over here. These might be previous shows that have stopped airing or future shows that are going to air. Not really seeing a lot here. Blue Reflection Ray. This is based on the video game called Blue Reflection, which I think is a game. We did see an announcement for a video game based on this. This might be a somewhat popular soccer anime. Since this list is so much longer, I would imagine this is stuff that has already aired. There's just a ton of logos. Without being able to read Japanese, it means nothing at all to me. The only other thing that could potentially catch my attention would be a movie. These are all live-action Japanese movies, highly unlikely to come to the West. And if they were going to come to the West, they would be on a streaming service. Duel is one of those instances where I can't do the best job of evaluating what they have to offer, but generally speaking, it seems like from the numbers alone, they have a decent amount of properties and IP to begin to go down that route, but it is probably an idea wrapped in that standard Japanese positivity that is insane, where they are expecting every single one of their intellectual properties to be turned into a very high selling game for very little development cost, and almost certainly I would think it will fail if they start slow, if they pick and choose the good shows to make games on. If they make things that are slightly better than your average visual novel, they could grow, certainly. But if they start to try and charge $70 for a visual novel that's 10 hours long, that's not going to work. Moving on with the news, Friday the 13th, the game is going to max out all players and unlock everything ahead of its delisting. The game will be pulled from sale at the end of 2023. That's something nice to do, certainly. So often we've had examples of games just being completely and totally abandoned or pulled from sale in one day's time without any warning. I guess this is a case where the developers of the game and the publishers of the game are trying to build as much possible goodwill as they can get while still being in this awkward situation where they couldn't renew the rights to Friday the 13th the game, or they couldn't justify running Friday the 13th the game and running the servers for it. I guess that's all there really is I have to say about it. Now, I don't talk about fan animations much because I don't follow enough people here, but here we have the Squid Kids being fan animated, which, yeah, it's pretty good animations, and it shows that there is at least a little bit of fandom for the Squid Kids. It's probably a mistake that they haven't done something more with the Squid Kids. They really should be. There should be a Splatoon short movie that comes out, or a TV show, or just a side game that does something different than the Splatoon style of gameplay. Apparently, Pokemon launched an official forum that was instantly spammed with questionable contents. Users are questioning whether the forums are such a good idea. Which appears to largely be migrated from the Pokemon trading card game online forum, seemingly isn't being moderated quickly enough to counteract some of the less suitable content being posted. So yeah, this is probably just another example of the Pokemon Company not really wanting to spend money on Pokemon. They really only want to profit off of Pokemon. They don't want to reinvest anything to have automated moderation or have moderators. Whereas any kind of Pokemon forum in general should be heavily moderated, and the main target should be little kids. And this is kind of a great example with the whole TBS potential there too, is that the Pokemon Company, in part owned by Nintendo, is a Japanese company that has one of the biggest IPs out there, and yet in something as simple as a forum, they just have failed miserably to make it a safe location for kids to discuss Pokemon online, which arguably wasn't a good idea in the first place. I don't know if forums of that style really make any sense. Anyways, we've kind of proven that people talking about Pokemon in an open forum like Twitter, where anybody could see the fandom showing their love for Pokemon, is more beneficial for the companies, for the Pokemon Company and Nintendo in that case, than it is to have your own separate forum that nobody would see unless they knew about it. And even if you have your own subreddit on Reddit, there is always that possibility that a discussion elevates itself to the front page, and then the front page is advertising your subreddit for Pokemon conversation. Which, yeah, again, gets more eyes and advertising out there for Pokemon. Like, generally speaking, I think having your own private forum doesn't work, and that's why I don't think Discord really makes the most sense, unless you want just a private group of friends communicating. If you want a private club, then yes, Discord works. But the fact that there is no front page to Discord, and there's no way to integrate following multiple Discords, as far as I know, on one page, really kills it as a concept for me. Moving on, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom update fixes broken quests and lets player redeem items. The version 1.2.0 patch is available to download now. Persona 3 Reload will no longer, quote, break social links between characters. Relationships still can be reversed, however. Which I have no idea what that specifically means, but for people who have played Persona 3, I assume that means if you do something that makes one character happy in the original Persona 3, it may break your relationship with another character. And so there were just some actions that you couldn't take, or you'd have to pick and choose who you wanted to have a relationship, the best relationship with. Right, that's not anything. And that was supposed to be a video. So, Apple, according to Video Games Chronicle, wants to take its legal battle with Epic to the Supreme Court. The iPhone maker is hoping that the anti-steering ruling will be overturned. Apple lost the court case on some aspects as far as they were found guilty of illegally restricting developers from having their own sales or links or buttons to other payment options outside of the App Store, which, yeah, Apple was being very monopolistic and they agreed with them. The problem now is the United States Supreme Court is just highly, highly questionable about what they would rule on anything, and they seem more than willing to make rulings based on very little. So if Apple does get in front of the Supreme Court, they may get overturned, on top of which they may create some incredibly large precedent. I guess the question, though, is there any real evidence that the Supreme Court would support Apple or any one big company? They might, but so far the Supreme Court has been mostly more focused on making laws that affect a lot more people than just one company. If this was overturned by the Supreme Court, you would just see Apple and Google Play being allowed to be more monopolistic, and that's not going to change things by much. Let's see. BioWare, if it loads, was the only video game company I saw with a Happy Independence post of any sort, which I can't really say I am surprised, but I'm also not really particularly happy that BioWare chose to do that. This is kind of an interesting picture in itself, in that you have the flag sideways and then you have fireworks. But yeah, really isn't anything you can really say on Independence Day, particularly if you're a global company, because anything you say positive of the United States breaking away from the UK is going to piss off the UK people at least a little bit. So it really is a great example where these corporations, whose only job is to sell you products, should just focus on advertising and selling you products instead of trying to act like a human being and have opinions on holidays. But of course, BioWare, probably mostly because they are just coming out of a huge month celebrating Pride, doesn't want to look like they only celebrate Pride, where it's very much the case that a lot of companies pretty much only do celebrate Pride and maybe Black History Month, things that are often considered major focuses of extreme SJWs, I guess. Here's that same story that Apple has reportedly scaled back Vision Pro production targets. And yeah, so far I have not seen any real limit on my Twitter use, but in fairness, there was about 100 new tweets over the course of 2 days. If you can look at 600 tweets every day, I never am going to cross that barrier. Here we have a cosplayer doing, I think, a pretty great job of 2B. I don't know if 2B ever has like a broken sword like this, but it's interesting as a prop, and clearly you don't have the eyes covered, but it does look like the outfit is done pretty well. And if anything, I would say this outfit seems to be a lot more conservative than it could have been. You have just a little bit of chest and just a little bit of leg showing in the staging. It's probably fairly dangerous to be standing where she is. Looks like she's about to slide into a hole or dig site. But yeah, decent cosplay, somewhat true to the character. Yeah, we have a Dead or Alive character, just kind of a generic wig. And I'd say the problem with this character in general is that most of her outfit is probably white, so you have to really get those details good as far as the red trim. And I don't think she really did that. You have a plastic sword prop, which, yeah, that stands out as amateurish. You have just what looks like white shoes off the shelf, and white stockings off the shelf. And these are probably just white sleeves. And this is probably just a white shirt with the red. So it kind of feels like it's not done particularly well. Obviously, this one is attempting to be a little bit more lewd, but it's not even really that much lewd. You got a lot of cleavage here and a lot of thigh. But somebody walking down the street dressed like this would not really catch my attention, other than, oh, there's somebody cosplaying. I did see a video of a cosplayer doing, I believe, Chun-Li or one of the Street Fighter characters, the one in the green unitard, and she was particularly physically well built, and all she was really wearing was the green unitard. And what really struck me there as she's posing and doing kind of lewd poses and stretches as people are circling around looking at her and taking photos of her, she was standing in one of the spots where it seemed like it was a cosplay alley type thing where cosplayers were inviting, by just standing there, people to take photos of them. Although generally it's better to always ask for a photo if somebody isn't just standing there already posing for photos, or even if they are standing there posing for photos, they may be posing for photos from their one photographer, not for everybody to take. But it just didn't look like that case. But what really struck in my mind is when you looked at the audience around there, this well-toned, physically fit lady is a lot of cosplayers whose body types definitely were not well-toned and physically fit. And you have people just like in masks doing very minimal cosplay, which that is probably the vast majority of cosplay, is that what gets shown online is the top 10% of quality, and everything that is the 90% is just not even good looking enough to be posted. But yeah, you can definitely feel that there is professionals out there who potentially are working out and exercising to maintain a form, and that's just their job, in the same way that a model's job is to maintain their form and appearance. And then there are the fans that are doing the fan work, and they are definitely not exercising and capable of maintaining that form. Of course, in fairness to the fans often actually know who the character is and have a real affiliation to the character or care about the character, and often have better costume design skills and actually try. The professional model cosplayers often are doing the exact same characters over and over again, and they just bought the costumes from somebody else. Moving on, Savage Games Studios CEO Mikhail Katkov has left PlayStation Mobile Dev. This is the second key figure to leave in a handful of weeks. I think we had already talked about that. And then we have Saints Row advertising Saints Row. I have no idea why they would even bother to advertise Saints Row, but they put out an update to the game, seemingly not fixing or at least not advertising that they have fixed any of the bugs and problems with the game. And even if they had fixed the bugs and the problems with the game, they really would not have been able to fix the core poor narrative and storytelling elements. But I guess at a certain point, the publisher probably had already paid for a DLC update, so can't really blame Saints Row for putting out content that they had to. I seriously doubt we'll see more content come out for Saints Row. And then there was this weird story. Banjo-Kazooie devs are unsure if the audience is there for a new game, but the original character designer calls for a Nintendo remaster. First thing to do definitely would be to see if you could convince Nintendo to do a remaster, although I don't think Nintendo is particularly happy with Rare, and then probably Rare wasn't particularly happy with Nintendo either. So those wounds, in particular when dealing with a Japanese company, tend to last forever. So I doubt Nintendo would do a Banjo-Kazooie remaster. I don't see a reason why they would do any remaster for anything that they don't 100% own. At least until they run out of their own games to potentially remaster. I do think 3D platforming collectathons have room to exist, but you have to do it right, and there's been several attempts over the past decade or two to make 3D platforming collectathon games, and it just never really comes off correct. I don't know if you really need Banjo-Kazooie, though. Anyways, I don't think there's anything that great about the story and the characters of Banjo and Kazooie. I think you could easily make Rare could easily make a new 3D platforming game in the vein of Banjo-Kazooie if they wanted to experiment with that. Of course, part of the problem of why 3D platforming collectathons may not succeed today is that so many other games have collectathon elements in them anyways, already built in. So you do potentially lose your audience, and even though games potentially are going to be $70 now, just having a bunch of OCD collectathon stuff is not a way to justify a game being so expensive. Here we have a Siri cosplayer, and this is an interesting picture in that it's incredibly tall in the resolution. There's clearly enough room to crop out some of this, but you see quite a lot of effort was put into this outfit. Doing a character like Siri does require a lot more custom clothing design. Does Siri not have a second sword? Does she only have one? Obviously you're going a little bit lewd in that there's some cleavage showing, but it does seem like the makeup, the hair, the prop on the sword, the costume itself. I wish there was an easier way to zoom in on this. Like we can do this, I guess, and in this case that's better. If anything, there's perhaps a failure here in that there aren't scars on her face and her face is too clean for the Witcher series. There aren't any cuts or rips in any of the clothing here. Is that supposed to be her second sword? Maybe. Looks like a sword. Yep. These might be off-the-shelf boots, but they match pretty well. These might be off-the-shelf leather pants, but it matches very well. I can see it possibly being leather pants that you added buttons to. These probably are off-the-shelf gloves, but This really does look like Siri. Keep expecting to go to a tab here. Apparently, Major Nelson has a YouTube channel. He has 40,000 subscribers, and I kind of wonder if he's on his way out, because he was promoting his YouTube channel. He's asking people to directly comment to him if they see in the Prime Day sales, which he really shouldn't need somebody to tell him that. This seems to be the Xbox podcast gets put on YouTube. I don't know if there's actual video here or not. Let's blur and see if it's actual video. Yeah, it's straight up actual video. The Xbox podcast has changed a little bit in the past year or so, in that they've introduced this new female character, which I feel like she's being set up to replace him. I mean, you look just here at the picture, and you've got this old white-haired guy in the middle, and then you've got young guy, young girl here on the sides. So yeah, I think Major Nelson is on the verge of potentially retiring. Of course, that's just speculation on my part. Here, 3 hours ago, Xbox and Bethesda will join them on the show floor of Gamescom 2023. Hi-Fi Rush has added 2 new game modes. You can see he's tweeting quite a bit. He wants a thread invite, or he'll just wait till see how it pans out. He's on Mastodon and Blue Sky also, which I haven't really looked at Blue Sky. Each one of these processes, I think, Thread and Blue Sky, maybe you can get on Mastodon without an invite, but all these feel pretty exclusive in that you need an invite originally to get on it, which maybe there's some logic to that, but honestly it just feels like the elite people who will get all of their friends to take all of the good names, and then the average person gets the crumbs later. Let's see. When did he promote the podcast? Like, he was promoting it on like Twitch before. Yeah, and I just didn't know that there was a YouTube channel there, which I should know that if there's a YouTube channel there. Yeah. And so here's Harry Potter Magic Awakened. This video playing in the background is the video that plays in the background when you first launch the game. I have not gotten to this point in 2 hours, or this point in 2 hours, or this point in 2 hours, or this point. They may be advertising things pretty well. I did get to this Diagon Alley, but even at that, you can see they're not even really showing you Diagon Alley. So yeah, they may be doing a they may just be doing the right form of advertisement. You don't arrive at Hogwarts on a boat, weirdly, by not focusing in on the card aspect, because for at least the first 2 hours you don't do anything. I'm still at Join Your House. I have not brewed any potions. I have done 1 tutorial battle of creatures. I have not dueled any players. I have not been able to explore Hogwarts in 2 hours. I have unlocked 4 cards, maybe 5, and I definitely haven't mastered any magic. I think that's what's potentially going to kill the game in itself, is that you are being asked to do 5 different types of things. So this character is representing your custom character, where this is a named character, this is the headmistress, this is a named character, this is a named character, these 2 twins are a named character. There is another character also, a blonde-haired shy boy that is not in this group. So that's weird. Alright, let's start pouring through the news a lot faster now. It's been an hour and a half, and I do quite enjoy the idea of potentially having shorter streams. The summer sale on Steam is still going on. Nothing has changed. You can still do the discovery queues and get trading cards. I did a couple of them. Video game news, video games chronicle. Let's start going through this. Microsoft expects Sony to launch a $400 PlayStation 5 Slim console this year. The Xbox maker also thinks a PS5 Pro console will be released in the near future. I wonder if by putting out that information as part of the Federal Trade Commission information, if you can't hurt Sony some way by saying that. Let's think of the scenarios here. If Microsoft says they expect a PS5 $400 Slim console to come out this year, and then Sony does put out a Slim console but it's not $400, then people are unhappy about the price. If they don't come out with a Slim console at all, people are unhappy with the fact that it didn't come out, and potentially people may not buy the original PS5 now because there's this thought out there that a $400 PS5 Slim console is coming out. So each of those scenarios hurt PlayStation quite a bit. So you could really just make up something in your files and say, yeah, we expect them to do a $400 Slim console. I imagine the $400 is lower than what Sony really would want to sell it for. So if Sony was making a Slim console for real and they were planning on releasing it for $450, now they've got this situation where they're going to either disappoint people or they're going to have to lose $50 more selling the console. And Microsoft can't be too extreme with this. They couldn't say they expect a $200 PlayStation 5 Slim console this year. They could say that, but that would not be believable. Or a $100 PlayStation 5 Slim console. Once again, this is why you maybe don't want things to go to a court case. Although I don't know if Sony really could have stopped the FTC from following this court case. So Microsoft is just getting free bullets to throw, to shoot. Yeah, and we will see if this expectation and this following turns out to be true. As far as a PlayStation 5 Pro console in the near future, I mean, it would just be better graphics, better CPU, better RAM speed, storage space, I would have to assume, if you're going to make a Pro version. And I don't know if there really is a good justification to make a PlayStation 5 Pro version. But yeah, you've got people speculating on both sides by making this statement. Now people are going to The people who wanted a PlayStation 5 for cheaper are going to not buy the original PS5 because they expect a slim version to come out, and people who want a more powerful PlayStation 5 are not going to buy the original PlayStation 5 in expectation of a Pro version. Meanwhile, you don't have the opposite statement being made as a headline, where Microsoft is not saying anything about, oh, we plan on putting out a slim version of our console that's cheaper, or of the Xbox Series S, or we plan on making a Xbox Series X Pro that's more powerful. Clearly, Microsoft has more cunning lawyers in this Game of Thrones political dealing than Sony does. At the very least, what we're now going to have to get is headlines where Sony comes out and denies any plans of a PlayStation 4 Slim. We already talked about Apple reducing its augmented reality headset production, and we already talked about Apple wanting to take its legal battle with Epic to the Supreme Court. I don't think Epic won on every aspect in that hearing, in that judgment. We already tried to talk about Persona 3 Reload no longer breaking social links between characters. The Italian video games business event First Playable takes place this week. It will include Italian Video Game Awards, which can be viewed on Video Games Chronicle. Seems like there is a real push to make this something. I've never heard of First Playable before. And from the list of the Italian Video Game Awards, there's just not that many recognizable Italian video game companies. Xbox has confirmed it will attend Gamescom 2023. It joins Nintendo as the second of the big three to confirm attendance. I do think Gamescom is going to take up some of the attention of E3, which that does make a lot of sense. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and just have big announcements at the Summer Game Fest. Although, that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if what Xbox shows at Gamescom is pretty much just reruns of the Summer Game Fest. The Zelda Tears of the Kingdom update we talked about. Pokemon's Forms we talked about. Friday the 13th we talked about. The Playground co-founder's new studio, Lighthouse, is getting a game-changing, quote-unquote, 10-cent investment. Lighthouse is led by Forza Horizon Studios co-founder Gavin Rayburn. So, yeah. I don't know what they really have in development at the moment, but they did just get an investment from Tencent. Tencent hasn't been in the news that much lately. They haven't really invested in anything lately. Pokemon Go's 7th anniversary party will see a return of a shiny Mew. The first 7th generation of starter Pokemon will also appear during the event. I seriously doubt that too many people are still playing Pokemon Go, but if you are, now would be the time to play, or now would be the time to get back in it. A new Xbox Game Pass titles for console, PC, and cloud have been revealed. That includes Exoprimal, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Tectonica. Game Pass is losing Exo 1, Paw Patrol, the movie, Adventure City Calls, and Spelunky 2. EA Sports Football Club 24 release date has reportedly been revealed. Do we have the actual date? September 29th, 2023. Pixel Junk Eden is coming to the PS4 and PS5. Until now, the game has only been available on Switch, according to Video Games Chronicles. Netflix has released Sonic Prime Season 2's first episode early on YouTube, which it's interesting that Netflix is advertising their service on YouTube. I could see YouTube getting mad about that kind of blatant advertisement, but I bet YouTube won't do anything about it. I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix is struggling at this point to gain more viewers and make up for the loss of viewers. It's very possible that the password sharing crackdown wasn't the final straw, but it was the second to last straw to push a lot of people away from Netflix, and I could see people just waiting for long-term subscriptions to run out. So throughout the course of potentially the next year, you may just see the numbers go down low or just stay at a smaller amount of growth. And Netflix is really in a bad position. Like, they really can't do... They needed to offer something new, frankly, instead of cracking down on the passwords. I don't know what you could have offered new. But certainly, I guess if they're going in the games direction, because said that the games were going to be new, but only for single households, or there was going to be new premium content that was only available to single households. But yeah, I really don't know what they could have offered. And clearly they didn't know what they could offer either, so they just went with the default password crackdown and caused a lot of negativity around their brand when they really needed just more positivity around the brand. If anything, now you'd basically have to hear that the CEO of Netflix or some other scapegoat got fired and that password sharing is back. Even if they brought back password sharing, but it cost $5 more, I think a lot of people might be willing to go that route. Instead of paying the $10 to $20 you're probably going to pay each month for Netflix as your own separate account. I imagine there are some people that really enjoy multiple profiles from multiple households all being accessible and interactable with it. There really isn't a way to say, hey, I found this show on Netflix, let's watch it together even though we are a far distance away. I'll watch one episode and then you'll go in and watch the same episode when you see it's already been watched a second time. There is no watch party feature like Amazon Prime for Netflix. And there's no way to go into somebody else's profile and say, hey, I think you'd like this show. Let me add this to your queue. There's also no way for, say, a parent to have, I don't know, I guess maybe if it was a special needs kid in college, maybe a parent would be a helicopter parent and looking at what the kid was watching on Netflix that way. That's a stretch, frankly. But yeah. The bigger issue there is an average parent sending their kids to college and then they're living in the dorm in college while at school, but they're still technically living with the parents outside of the those times. This is an old story. Blizzard will reveal Diablo 4 Season 1 this week. Nintendo was closing its subscription service. I bet all of this news here is old stories from Monday. Yeah. Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown has seemingly been delayed to 2024. Super Mario RPG's original director is not involved in the remake, but is very pleased about it. I don't see if you really even need a director to remake a game. At a certain level, yeah, remaking a game probably does need a director, but probably doesn't need the same kind of director as a creative venture of creating something new from scratch. You can have a much more bare bone team, and at some point we are going to just get to a level where you could run an AI image generator program through old games and remaster and remake them with very little human input at all. We already talked about Banjo-Kazooie. Majora's Mask art director wanted to work on one last, quote, strange Zelda. I wanted to make something a little bit more unique with a little twist. I wonder if this is a statement. It seems like he's making this statement before his retirement in 2021, so he didn't get his wish. I could almost see a case where Majora's Mask art director wanted to make one last, quote, strange Zelda, and he made Majora's Mask. But Majora's Mask in particular just does not really fit in Zelda as a Zelda game, and frankly, it should have been its own separate game and could have even been a spin-off of a separate series. It is just a little too weird, and you have like Twilight Princess and I think that and Majora's Mask, and then every other Zelda game is just way more normal compared to those two games. Tokyo Game Show will hold its, quote, largest ever event this year. When is the Tokyo Game Show happening? Do you have an actual date? 4 days between September 21st to September 24th. So it's going to be several months still. Bandai Namco, Capcom, Konami, and Xbox are among the exhibitors. Oddly, no Sony and no Nintendo. Which maybe that is where you get a coalition of smaller Japanese game companies and Xbox, which is not a Japanese company, working together. If Nintendo is too good to be at the Tokyo Game Show, and Sony is too good to be at the both of them think they're too good to be at the Tokyo Game Show. July's PlayStation Plus Essential Games are now available to claim if you want to check out Video Games Chronicle for that list. Ark Survival Ascends gets a price cut alongside a release date and DLC delays. The price cut, though, is still more than free, which was what they promised when you pre-ordered Ark Survival 2, or Survival Evolved 2. So I don't think the fans are particularly happy around the idea of a price cut, as long as it's anything. Again, it's a situation of giving something for free and then taking it away. Noticeably, I did also want to mention that there is nothing to report. The news here I'm about to report is there is no news with the Alice Madness, Alice Asylum failed project, and American McGee. Like, his YouTube streaming channel seems to have just been completely abandoned. I haven't seen him stream or talk about anything at all. I think he's just gone fully silent. You could put on a tinfoil hat and say the Chinese government got to him and said, quit streaming and quit talking. But more than anything, I assume the scam is just kind of done. Like, the scam that was built around the hope that EA, I believe it is, was ever going to fund a new Alice game, American McGee Alice game. Weirdly, talks of the Wizard of Oz game have just completely disappeared. and he hasn't even shown up to try and promote the dreadful plushies products and the swag that he was selling. So yeah, he has just disappeared from the internet as far as I can tell. And yeah, I do suspect that on some level he actually thought that was going to succeed when there really wasn't a backup plan and there really wasn't a good reason to believe it would succeed. So, you know, they made that whole game Bible though. It would be so easy to say, alright, we made this game Bible. We probably weren't getting paid enough to just make the game Bible and not have the game actually be made, so why not convert that game Bible into a different game? It's not that hard to turn Alice into Dorothy and make a Wizard of Oz game. It's not that hard to potentially turn Alice into a just generic character with the same visual style. And honestly, you could make an Alice in Wonderland game as long as you don't have American McGee's name at the top of it. I'm sure he could make a game set somewhat in an Alice in Wonderland type world. But nope. He was only really capable of making any product if he could convince another company, EA, to publish it and to hire another company to program it, because he just wasn't capable of programming the game. So I'm reporting that there's nothing to report, which several months now it's been the case. He's just disappeared. In all fairness, Yandere Simulator, in contrast, last I heard, is still making updates and still promising the game is coming out. I haven't checked in on him in probably about 6 months, if not a year. But yeah, it might be better to just say it failed and give up and go on and move on with your life. I would have liked to see American McGee move on to making another game, or at least having the ideas of a story that could be the basis of a game created by a different team. But yeah, I think he's just old enough that and rich enough that he can just retire and move on. Now we're going through the Komatsu articles. Atelier Marie remake has a How to Play trailer. I think we'd already talked about that. Persona 5 Tacticia has a character spotlight number 1 if you want to check that out on Komatsu. Alice Escaped! Exclamation point for the PS4 and Switch launches in Q3 of 2023. Here you have anime moe characters based on not American McGee's, but Alice in Wonderland. In that you have the Cheshire Cat, the Mad Hatter, the Dodo, and Tweedledee and Tweedledum, I bet, with the 2 eggs. This is on Steam. So, what kind of game is it? It's a side-scrolling hack and slash game, rated very positively. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put it on the wish list. Yeah, nothing proves it better, though, that you can take the public domain Alice in Wonderland and do something with it if you want. I think that's a major part of his problem, though, is that he was tying everything to the idea that EA had to fund it, instead of having a new unique idea that wasn't tied to Alice in Wonderland, like the Oz game that could have been pitched to multiple companies. Although I wouldn't be surprised if he did pitch Oz to multiple companies and got rejected by all of them, because we aren't really in a position where it feels like a lot of publishing companies want to publish games outside of their own subsidiaries. Uh, a romance visual novel called Nico Nien X Heart is coming to the Switch in Q4 of 2023, following the rest of the series, according to Gamatsu. Persona 3 Reload has an Anime Expo 2023 trailer and screenshots. I guess Anime Expo happened, but there's only so many announcements that would have come from that. CyberConnect 2 to open an Osaka studio in spring of 2024. Company structure changes, improved working environments, and revised salary system have been announced. So that's a lot of inside baseball to say we're going to start paying our employees perhaps slightly better and treating our employees slightly better. CyberConnect 2, I think, being one of the companies that makes the Digimon games. That looks like a Digimon game. Is that really a Digimon game? Just a big old slideshow. No, I don't think that is a Digimon game. So you've got a lot of games in the background there, blurred out, which makes it difficult to figure out. I guess the biggest thing you could do is click on the company profile. Naruto X Boruto, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Fuga Memories of Steel. The Montreal studio 2 months ago closed, so they literally closed a Canadian studio to open a Japanese studio. Demon Slayer. Let's see. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. The problem with CyberConnect 2 as a company, it seems, is that they are almost exclusively doing anime license, mostly fighting games. So they can try to treat their employees as much better as possible, but at the core of it, the production companies that are licensing and funding the development of these games are going to want to pay the bare minimum they can get away with. .hack series 20th anniversary, bringing that back would be helpful if they could reboot the .hack series and make some sense. One of the things they'd have to do if they were going to reboot the .hack series of games is make them much better games and not long-winded dialogue dramas. Yeah. But also, why do that when Demon Slayer probably would sell better? Yeah, it doesn't feel like they have a single IP that they own instead of just making licensed games. Fantavision 2020X limited print physical edition have been announced for North America and Europe. The Settlers New Allies for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Luna is now available. Settlers New Allies is only available at the Ubisoft Store and the Epic Games Store, which that's an interesting split there to say the Epic Games Store got it and the Ubisoft Store got it, but Steam doesn't have it. Natsumon 20th Century Summer Vacation has a game overview trailer, which if I had more time or cared a little bit more, I would actually watch this trailer. But it's also got the Nintendo Switch logo on it, which is something. So the kid's kicking a tree, he's running around, he's talking to people. It looks like it is pretty much just a adventure area. You run around, you dig, you pick up things, you find objects. In a lot of ways, it feels like it is just a mini game collection where you're going to interact with one mini game once or twice, and then you'll move on in the story to something else. Persona 5 Tacticia Arena trailer is available on Gematsu if you want to check that out. The Tokyo Broadcast System Television establishes TBS Games. Gematsu doesn't really have anything more to say either about that. We have the Famitsu review scores for issue 1805. So the Atelier remake, The Alchemist of Salberg, has been given a 30 out of 40. So not particularly high reviews there. A game called Bleak Sword DX for the Switch got 31 out of 40. And I've never even heard of that game. Edo Zero Zombie Uprising got 31 out of 40. I was hoping that that one would be a slightly better reviewed game. And then F1 23 has gotten a 35 out of 40, so they are very happy with that racing game. Let's check that one out too. Edo Zero Zombie X Rising was this game. Bunch of feudal era ninjas, for lack of a better term, in the Edo period fighting zombies. Some more screenshots here. You have a big sumo-like character. Well, I heard an interesting thing that sumo wrestlers tend on average to die about 30 years younger than your average Japanese person, which certainly makes a lot of sense. They're overeating to the maximum. They're engaging in very physical activity that is probably not healthy for you, of slapping and wrestling and pushing each other. I'd also say I suspect that a lot of sumo wrestlers are effectively abandoned children of bad parents. Like, that may not be universal, but sending your kids to a sumo wrestling training facility is to say, I don't want to raise your kid, and I don't care if my kid is overweight and pigeonholed to work this one career and this one career only. This was a very pretty racing game, looking at these screenshots. And yeah, they seem to like it. Very, very pretty looking, like most racing games tend to be. But particularly, even in that case, very pretty looking. River City Rival Showdown is coming to the PS4, Switch, and PC on October 12th in Japan. It was first released on the 3DS in 2016, so they are effectively just porting it. And I bet that comes to the West. Crowdfunding campaign for a Switch version of Trigger Heart Excella begins on July 7th. Funding to be gathered via Makuake, which I assume that's not Kickstarter. I've never heard of Makuake. It must be a very Japanese-centric crowdfunding site. Let's see what it looks like when I click on it. Yeah. Very Japanese-centric website. And yeah, the Japanese still really haven't gotten to the modern visual style. There's just a lot of stuff going on their websites that make them very distinct and different from what Western websites are. Although, in all fairness, if I was to disable everything as far as all the content being ad blocked, there's quite a lot going on here too, but still kind of a large amount of empty space on the sides, at least. A lot of this is also just ads being blocked by other ad blockers. I couldn't turn off all the ad blockers even if I wanted to. Not easily. Which on the holy night for the PS4 and Switch, shipments and digital sales have topped 150,000, which I would have to say that feels like a pretty big amount considering this is probably a visual novel. Let's see, release dates, PC. Trying to figure out if there's a way to find the Steam link here. But I guess I can't find it. So we've got one screenshot here. 2 screenshots there. They really aren't giving you a lot of screenshots. 4 screenshots there. That is not a lot. PlayStation Store, eShop, and PlayAsia. So it's not on Steam, is my guess. Yeah. Because there would be a Steam link there. Alright, moving on. A 4-player co-op top-down shooter called Kill Squad is coming to the PS4 and PS5 on July 20th. There might be something to that catches people's attention. It's obviously a 4-player game though, so it's not something I could play. Although when I see these screenshots like this, it's perhaps too easy now for me to just dismiss it. There really is nothing visually here that justifies dismissing it, but yeah, nothing particularly special jumping to my attention either. We already talked about the Xbox Game Pass titles. It seems like the list is better here. GTA 5, Sword and Fairy, Together Forever, Mac Pixel 3, Common Hood, Insurgency Sandstorm, Exoprimal, Tectonica, Game Preview, The Cave, and then Race Like Barbie and Kin and Forza Horizon 5, FIFA 23 Women's World Cup, Hi-Fi Rush Update, Wolong's Fallen Dynasty downloadable content, Battle of Zongyuan, and then Sniper Elite downloadable content, Kraken Awakens. Interesting that they're listing DLC now as updates. You get Ultimate Team Pack for NFL 23 if you're in the Ultimate perk, and Sea of Thieves Obsidian Banjo Pack. Then there's also quests you can do where if you earn an achievement or play Peggle 2, hit 100 orange pegs, or Ghostwire Tokyo, just playing it. So you get these points. What are the points really worth, though? It would be nice if there was more of a system there where doing something you might do anyways, having basically daily quests on Xbox Game Pass overall would give you points to potentially purchase a game or purchase DLC, which for the most part DLC usually isn't included in an Xbox Game Pass, I don't think. Then XO1 and Paw Patrol and Spelunky 2 are leaving. We had already talked about that. Pixel Junk Eden 2 coming to the PS4 and 5 and PC in 2023. Although, weirdly, Video Games Chronicle missed the PC part on that. I recognize the Pixel Junk series name, and so I think that does justify making a short and putting it on the fall list. Otherwise, I would look at this mess of visuals and just assume that this is some kind of visualizer and not really worth my attention. A game called Alterborn has pre-alpha gameplay, if you want to check that out on Gamatsu. And then a game called Adore launches August 3rd. It's an action creature collecting game leaving early access, which I think that potentially justifies another YouTube short on it. Weirdly, this is already on my wish list. I don't know why I would have pulled the trigger on that, though, since it's in early access. And that's going to bring us to GameDeveloper.com, of which we probably have talked about all the stories. Yeah. Mikhail Katkov leaving PlayStation Mobile Dev. The iconic game Barbie fashion designer faced incredible technological hurdles. She knocked down multiple rendering servers. Apparently. This is a story talking about an old game that really has no justification in being written other than the fact that there's a Barbie movie coming out. I did modify the trigger on when the auto blur enables. I don't think I modified it enough. Let's see, we'll close this and see if the auto blur enables. Yes, it does. Alright, so I needed to change the number from 4 to 6, and I changed it from 4 to 5. That's not a big deal. We can fix that. At least we're on the right track. Midnight Ghost Hunt attracts 1 million new players after the Epic Game Store debut. This is a ghost hunting multiplayer game, I would assume. Microsoft Activision's Blizzard's merger has been approved in South Africa. We already talked about Apple cutting Vision Pro production targets and delaying plans for more affordable headsets. We already talked about Lighthouse Games securing a Tencent investment. We've already talked about TBS making a full-scale entry into the gaming industry. Here's an interesting story, potentially. 1996 Sega documents reveal Sony hostility and a strained US-Japan relations. Mismanaging the Sega Saturn and a splash of overconfidence towards Sony eventually led to Sega being put on the back foot once the Nintendo 64 came around. I don't know if any of these documents would have come out because of the FTC listing, and if anything, this really probably is just explaining history a little bit better, showing how Sega screwed themselves over. Like, there definitely is an alternate universe where if Sega had done a better job of getting licensors and other game developers to make games for their consoles, and had come out with something to compete with the Nintendo 64 that wasn't just another attachment to the Master System, which that there had just been released too many attachments. Sega effectively found the line in that at best one expansion attachment can happen to a console, and after that point people just expect that they want to buy a whole new thing. So NES potentially was designed to have an expansion added to it. It never got that expansion, but it did get a revision of its form factor, and it got many controllers and accessories, but that doesn't really matter. Super NES got the Game Boy adapter as an expansion, and that's a weird thing to call an expansion, I know. But then the Nintendo 64 took it in a more pure form, in that there was a memory expansion, in that there were save cartridges you could save your games on, and rumble packs. But there was also a RAM GPU expansion that you could put in the Nintendo 64. Nintendo, I guess, is kind of an example that none of them really had true expansions. In contrast, the Master System had adapters and the Sega CD and the X32, 32X adapter, and it just became an attempt to recreate what a PC was. Where Sega probably should have just made the Master System, and then they should have come out with a Sega 64, and they should have had much better relationships than with their license companies. Sega could have either gotten plenty of licenses from Western people, or they could have just done a better job of wooing other Japanese companies to make games on their console. This is potentially a story I would like to read, but noticeably, this is a 272 page PDF that can be read here. So I'll wait for some other YouTuber to try and bring that down to something much more manageable. So anyways, this is the where the auto blower should have triggered, was on this slide. Faultless cleanup now. Let's see. Hell Furnace has 71 reviews. 2D boss rush game. 73%. The problem here is it's just a boss rush game. I'm gonna give this more time and think about it some more. I'll think about it later. Hell Card. Very positive card game. Is it still in early access? Yes, it is. So we'll give it more time. Hell Shuffle. We're going through the ages, so everything with hell in the name. He's from February of 2021. You can see it doesn't have any relevancy. 22 reviews, still in early access. So that's gotta go. Hell Pages is also from 2021. And yeah, some of this art style seems weird and unique, and I feel like that was probably catching my attention. The erotic art in the background is probably catching my attention somewhat. Skinless lady. I kind of would like to see some of this art style put in a different game, but then a lot of it also just looks kind of bad and doesn't stand out to the background, and it really just doesn't matter. There's just no relevancy to it, so it's gotta go. And we have Hell of an Office, which is a VR game. It's a rocket jump, run and jump platforming game that's in early access from March of 2023. There's another game like this where you're running around a hellish area. I don't remember what it is. I don't know why there's also two different metrics from SteamDB here. I could probably just say no to this now, though. I just don't think I want to play these Infinite Runner. And particularly since you know that like Neon White now exists. So if you are going to play a game like this, Neon White would make all the sense in the world. And even the more like this recommendation is doing the right job of pointing you towards that game. So yeah, hell of an office. It's gonna be no. Hell of a racket. Looks like it's a tennis game. Anything with hell in the name, high chance it's just going to be a pun. This looks like this is just a free-to-play game, so it really should have a lot more reviews. So infinite running with a tennis ball and a tennis racket in your hand, and you seem to just swing the tennis racket. You don't seem to actually hit the tennis ball in a way that it would actually go in the direction you're aiming. Yeah, looking at this video, I can pretty well tell there's not enough polish here. That's gotta go. Oh, and at least we can get rid of the majority of the games with hell in the name. I don't know how many times YouTube would appreciate me having a game with hell in the title. Hell Architect is mixed reviewed, which is a shame because I'd actually really enjoy playing this game. I think part of the problem though too is there's just a lot of naked sinners being punished there and tortured, and well, I think the sinners have fig leaves. It might be that the demons don't. See, in a lot of ways this feels like Dungeon Keeper's sentimentality, although it's a little more cartoony. It's a shame it's so poorly reviewed. Hell Architect 2.0. When did the 2.0 come out? Yeah, you can see the demons are naked too. It would be nice if there's a tutorial and the game were ever in the same room together at the same time. This could have been cool if it was finished. Bugs could be found from bad reviews. I've added the Discord discussion and asked something about fixes and updates. Developer replied, "We're making other game, no time to do this, no plan now." In fact, Hell Architect is abandoned, no more fixes and updates. But it's not great, but it's also not terrible. So it's just a lack of bug fixing, a lack of optimization. That's a shame. So if you need an idea to steal, certainly Hell Architect has got it. There's very little here I imagine you couldn't steal with a different art style and do exactly the same. This macabre comedy perhaps doesn't work for enough people to make a game that makes profit, but it might. That may have been part of the problem with like Dungeon Keeper too, is that eventually Dungeon Keeper as a concept loses its niche audience. Yeah, that is a shame. Is there anything like it? Not that the YouTube algorithm would be good about this. They're saying RimWorld, Factorio, yeah, things within that don't have hell in the name, selling way better. Oxygen Not Included is basically the same concept too. Planet Coaster. Meanwhile, this guy's prologue here is actually way better reviewed. So yeah. And these are reviews from like the past 180 days. So it's not really a case that the reviews are bad for the old version of the game. The game has just been abandoned. This like 2.0 really should have been the thing to fix it. So why is the prologue so much better reviewed? Prologue is a free standalone version of the game Hell Architect. So do you lose potentially the multiplayer aspects? Or what? Now, it seems like the art is covering up more in this case and no longer just fig leaves. Terrible, shameless ripoff of Oxygen not included. No depth, pun not included. Pretty bare bones and poorly balanced. So yeah, I guess this creates a good game to just put on the wish list if you get the prologue for free, and then don't purchase the full game because the full game isn't worth it. I think I tried to cover Oxygen not included, and I found the game kind of irritating around the oxygen aspect of that. So I'm going to put the prologue. I usually don't play prologue games at all, but in this case, the price tag of free, I think, does a decent. It does potentially look like there's less torture devices in the prologue compared to the main game, which maybe makes the game less fun. This is also almost certainly a game that would be better on a mobile phone than playing on PC, or at least to have mobile phones support. Helga, the Viking Warrior, Ivar's Revenge. We can remove this from the fall list. It's got no reviews. And then Air, Obscure, A Hunt in the Dark. It's from July 20th. I guess I'm going to give this more time, but probably nothing here. The only thing that really is catching my attention is this art style of this lady, whereas everything else is in darkness and just doesn't look that good. I could probably, yeah, I should remove it. It's 2022. Yeah, that's gotta go. I thought that was saying 2023. Heme is 2021, so it too has to go. A Norse mythology story-driven adventure. One user review. Let's see what the one user review is. Fun Zelda-like adventure minus the combat. Quite sizable too. $6.39. Yeah. For some reason the Steam DB is doubled up today, but whatever. All-time peak of 2 people playing it, 110 followers. It doesn't matter how good this game is if it's that irrelevant. I'm just not at a level where enough people watch my YouTube videos where I could justify playing a game like this and think that I would actually get new people to potentially play a game or purchase a game to make a game that is irrelevant now, not irrelevant in the future. So it's just gotta go away. And then Heidelberg 1693. It's probably not the kind of game I'd want to play as a hack and slash game, but I'm gonna say go ahead and put it on the wish list anyways, because it meets the requirements. And it is slightly different in that you're fighting zombies in Germany in 1693. So that was the fall list cleanup. Now we'll just go through all the games that have come out in the past couple days. So let's see. Fugium doesn't look like anything. Jump to Survive. Doesn't look like anything. Oh, you're jumping to avoid getting hit. I thought it was a game that literally was just going to make you jump every bunny hop everywhere. Here we have Luminous Skies, Short Adventure. Must have done something on the zoom here. Nope. It's just a weird split of this lighter blue when we get down here. I thought that was a scroll bar. I did play around with the idea of the zoom changing things, changing text only, but yeah, that definitely did not work on Firefox, to have the zoom only change the text size and not change the pictures. So yeah, I don't know why you have this weird blue difference. It just kind of makes everything from this point down highlighted in a lighter blue. But also, what have I been saying is that they are slowly working their way to removing the blues, the bright blue that was once Steam, in favor of either white or black. Although a lot of times it seems like they've shifted it to be closer to a black and a dark screen mode with a black background. In this case, it feels like they're making it paler for a white light screen mode. Let's see, next we have a game called Wreck Beyond the Lens. There is a horror movie series called Wreck, R-E-C, Record. Almost wonder if this is related in some way. So I'm going to give it a chance. Should I give it a YouTube short? No. Yeah, we have a political joke game. Putin must die, defend the White House. I am surprised that they would do that, or that Steam would allow that. This is probably past the line of what Steam should allow when you're directly attacking even a political character in this way. I think that there's nothing good is coming from this. You're not making a good game. You're not making a good political statement. You're not affecting politics in any way. Meanwhile, you're trying to get money off of people. Now, what you might take from that is that a game like that very possibly is being made by Russian troll companies that are trying to launder money or push propaganda. And if all of a sudden Russian troll companies on Steam and other places are putting out that message, then that might be an indication that Putin has really lost a lot of support from his oligarchs. Here we have another RPG Maker looking game. Nothing interesting there. Power Vacuum. Looks like it's an asset flip game of some sort. Super Hornet looks like it potentially is an old flight simulation game. There was a lot of these back in the day. None of them particularly that interesting. There was many categories of games that particularly were designed to appeal to people who had been in the military, people who would have had the technical training to actually have home PCs and potentially a pension or enough money to afford a PC, or experience of actually using a PC. So yeah, there's a lot of military, a lot of hunting style games back in the day for early Windows 95 PC gaming. And it was actually quite a long time before something like Doom came around, and then you started to see an establishment of PC gaming being also for a newer generation, a younger generation, kids, or at least teenagers. And we've never really seen a full shift in that direction. It's still older gamers that play on PC, I would say, more than most. But we do see kids games at least being ported to PC, which that was not happening as much. There were Apple games for kids early on. Next Station Zombies looks like it's an on-rails shooter defender, although on-rails shooter generally has you shooting forward, not shooting backwards to protect yourself. This is the kind of gameplay mechanic that would be good in a sequence, but probably isn't good enough to justify an entire game. Let's see, Jungle Ring 2D. Looks like nothing. Looks like maybe it's a side-scrolling shooter. If anything, it's actually a Flappy Bird clone. We don't have a lot of Flappy Bird clones coming out. So here we have yet another adult game, adult visual novel, possibly yet another cheating on your neighbor's wife game. It's fully in Japanese. You have a flat 2D anime adult lady, I would say, big breasts. Looks like a visual novel, and if anything, it looks like it might be an older visual novel because it's not in widescreen. English is not supported. It's $15.99 and it's Japanese only, so I can't read any of the Japanese description to give you a name or anything like that, but I would assume this is yet another cheating NTR game story. Just one character. And I would also assume it is an older game being released. But this is also an adult game. Cute hentai waifu. It's 2048 from the looks of it, as far as the gameplay mechanic. And then there are some drawings of what looks like the same girl. And I would say this does not seem to be animated by an actual Japanese animator. The animation looks rough and it looks like a Western animator made it. I'd also say the pictures are perhaps more lewd than actual showing a lot of nudity. 2048 as a gameplay mechanic's not terrible, and the game itself is only selling for 69 cents. It says it supports English, Italian, Spain, Spanish, Japanese, and Polish above the fold, and then adds Russian, Swedish, Chinese, and Ukrainian below the fold. So yeah, I would suspect this is probably a Russian made game. The problem I would think you'd run into with 2048 though is that it's very hard to get a 2048. So if it requires that to unlock the final version of the pictures, that would be too difficult and take too long. And it's generally just not that good of a gameplay mechanic overall. It's a fine little time waster for like a mobile phone game for a while. Noticeably though, also 2048, while super popular for a few months, it's not talked about now. It's not emulated now. It's not a long-lasting concept of a game. It's hardly something like chess. This game planting trees. I don't think there's quite enough here that would make me want to play this. Seems too much like it's trying to be a environmental story for kids and looks too much like a mobile game. So I'm going to say no to that. Star OS. I wonder, maybe I could do something here. If we introduced an edge on Steam and indented it. No, I don't think that would work. Like what I really need to do is zoom in a little here, but that totally breaks everything. So unless I could change the zoom increment, yeah, I could zoom out to that. I could zoom in to this point. I prefer to stay at this point, but I think it is probably better. Let's try this zoom. There's going to be more dead space on the sides, but whatever. Star OS as a game, though, doesn't look like anything. No, the reason I want to zoom in here is I want to see, this one needs to reload, if the adult content banner will show up. Hidden Village top-down 3D. Hidden objects in the 3D environment's not the worst thought ever, so I'm gonna give it a follow and make a YouTube short on it. In all fairness. So, yeah. This is better for that reason. Because without scrolling down, I can see the gray. This game is marked adult only. This game is called The Shrink Season 1. And it's a 3D CGI lady. Well, 3D CGI ladies. And one guy. Almost certainly it's just pre-rendered cutscenes in that standard visual novel aspect. And once again, it's one of those games where the trailer immediately is just hardcore pornography in the first second. So, yeah, that works. The question would be, if I was to try and center and crop the edge, does that do anything for me? Not really. The Shrink Season 1 is selling for $9.89 and it's English only as an adult game. Then next we have Last Survivors, which looks like it's just an asset flip first person shooter of no interest. And I've probably got to rerun my reprogram my macro to take more time, wait for a page to load more. It seems like there's this cascading issue around one page doesn't load and then the next page is struggling to load because the previous page is still loading. And I need to potentially make sure everything loads faster or loads before the next thing is asked. Team 6 here is nothing. Some of this may be because of my quality of service. Like, I've never really been able to get it to work as well as I would like. But it mostly works. This is just bouncing a ping pong ball up and down which should not be made into a video game. This is something you do if you're bored and have nothing better to do in the real world. This is not the kind of activity that has any justification to be converted to a virtual interaction. Next we have something called COVID-23 test labs, not to be confused I guess with COVID-19. So this is speculating that there will be a new variant of COVID in 2023 of significant importance that people would mention it and name it. I think overall I don't like that implication, and the game doesn't look that good to justify ignoring that. Again, this may just be a troll game due to that element. So here we have a game called The Interview, and it's another 3D CGI realistic style game. Looks like there's at least 2 ladies and 1 guy. They all look so incredibly similar. It's all the same characters and models just getting used over and over again to give these visual novel stories, which I wouldn't be surprised if many of these chapters, like this game says it's chapter 1 of the story in the description, but it's just called The Interview in the title. Wouldn't be surprised if each of these are extremely short, like 30 minutes at most. And there's not a lot of variety or anything to say here. Like, looks like there's maybe several guys, several girls, several encounters and interactions. Weirdly, there's a picture here of Batman. I don't know where that came from. And then the next screenshot has a lady holding a little girl, fully clothed, both of them, but that seems weird too. So I think I gotta show that. Yeah. So you have Batman 66 here being rendered for what seems like no good reason, maybe a joke or a pun. And then you have a screenshot of a CGI lady holding a CGI little girl, and then the next screenshot has this little girl chasing after this man, so who knows what's going on with that. This is the first time I've ever seen a little girl 3D model used in any of these adult games. The game itself is $9.99. Says it has BDSM in it, but none of the screenshots show that. It says it's English only. Yeah, that's really the only real diversity I could find and describe these different games, is to say one game is focused on one fetish versus a game not being focused on any fetishes, or focused on a different fetish. Generally, though, it looks like they're just trying to do a little bit of everything in this one. Here we have a Japanese game called, I guess, Nyanpaya, which looks like it's a match 3 game, match 4 game with cats. Not a terrible thought, but only supports Japanese. I like seeing this too. So often we'll get Japanese only visual novels or adult content, but to see Japanese game developers are now crossing the line and saying, hey, I can also make just a regular game for everybody, or a cute cat game, and sell it and put it on Steam. That's a step in the direction of seeing Steam potentially gain some dominance in Japan, instead of which potentially increases the chance of a game like this getting an English patch in the future. That's the hope, at least. It kind of doesn't benefit anybody if they just put Japanese games on Steam and then they never get translated to English, and that just gives more of a monopolistic power to Valve. The goal is not to give more monopoly power to Valve. This game looks like it is all over the place, and I question if some of these 3D models and art isn't taken from other places. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this art is actually from some other source that's potentially not legally licensed. This is 99 cents, Japanese only. I couldn't tell you what this game even is. Some kind of third-person shooter. That's what it's tagged as. Let's see. Ducks can drive. Doesn't look like much of anything. Although I do appreciate a nothing game at least having a level of visual polish, even if it doesn't have a good premise or concept as far as gameplay mechanic. Let's see. Next we have a card game called Deck of Life, which I'm going to give this a follow, but visually right now it doesn't look good enough to get a YouTube short around it. Then we have yet another adult game called Wrangler, which looks like it's an RPG Maker game with a rat. I don't even know why this is labeled as adult only. There's not a single screenshot here that seems adult content. Now down here at about the game, it seems like it is. You're playing as the rat, and the rat is apparently sleeping with other rats, to put it kindly. Weird. Weird English only game for $7.99. And at the core of it, you would not really ever want to play or purchase this game. They're calling it a turn-based sex RPG, which maybe there's a thought to that idea, but you'd have to have a lot better visual polish for that to make sense. Next we have Parsec Lost in Space, which looks like nothing. Next we have Reaper's Isle. Let's watch this trailer a little bit and see. There's a lot of purple going on. I'll give it a follow, but no short. I think increasingly that is what's going to happen is I'm going to start downgrading games and not making YouTube shorts. This is yet another asset flip of what looks like the same backwards game I've seen multiple times. But yeah. There's room to make less YouTube shorts, I think, by far. I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom here if I don't hurry. Alright, nothing to Forest Phantoms. I think we can probably say nothing to Dungeon Rebound. I think we can say nothing to Shire Scopes. Sniping in feudal times doesn't make a lot of sense. Christina Wars 2. Looks too much like a mobile game. I'm gonna give it a chance. Put it on the follow list. Machi Above the Void. Indie puzzle game. I'll give that a chance. Monster Rampage VR. Yeah, it doesn't look too terrible. Adolf Hitler, Last Minutes of the Millennium Empire. Yeah, no, troll games. Something's going on. We've got a lot of political troll games coming through all of a sudden. In the dark. Or in the dark. Yeah. There's probably nothing to this. I'll be generous, put on the follow list. Notice that this developer is called the Very Big Fish Games. There is a very popular publisher and developer called Big Fish Games that already exists, so there's some name confusion being created there. Mencia, a Never Was Tale. Not to be confused with the comedian Carlos Mencia, I guess. Hard Boiled Farm. That looks like a Vampire Survivors clone of no quality. Amnesia. Looks like it's just a dark screenshot horror game. Formula 2707 All-Star Combat. I think we can say no to that. Original. Yeah, I don't think there's a game there. I'm gonna be cruel because I have to go to the bathroom now. 3D Puzzle Battle Royale is obviously just a name confusion game, so no to that. Brick Breaker. Nope. Just have a few more to cover. Fish Gun is probably trying to be confusion around a different game where you have a weird gun. So I'm going to say no to that. Mars Survivors does look good, so we'll make a short around that. Ultimate Tag doesn't look like anything. And then Plague Breaker. You know what, I'll make a short around that too. So that's the end of the show. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's some links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.